Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the first episode of Live in the Triangle, where we take your favorite Triangle business people and entrepreneurs and take a few minutes to find out their story and how they got from the early days to where they are now. This is episode one, so bear with us as we work out the kinks to what Live in the Triangle ends up becoming. But as we go along this journey, I hope you enjoy it. For our first episode, we have Alex Panait, the CEO of roguemark, a video production company here in the Triangle. I've had the opportunity to know Alex for close to 4 years now. He was one of the first people I met when I moved here. Back in those days, he was a programmer, and we'll kind of talk about how he got from the technology side to a video production company, as well as some of the fears that many of you people probably have when it comes to chasing your dreams and chasing your passion. So I want to say thank you again for taking your time this afternoon to talk with us, Alex.
Thanks for having me, Cole. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Well, I guess, the first question that's on my mind is, I think you have one of the most interesting stories here on the Triangle. Unlike some people, you're actually from outside of the United States. Here in the Triangle, we have many people who relocate. You actually come from us via Romania. Before even the Triangle, though, you were in Kentucky, then you moved to North Carolina to be a programmer, dabble in the technology field. How did you end up in a video production company?
I started out with portrait photography. I have a friend who currently works for Facebook, and I went to grad school with him. And one day I went up to, well, it was actually a Skype call, but I told him that I wanted to start doing photography, and he said, what kind of photography? And I sent him a picture of a portrait that I really liked. And he said, okay, buy this camera and buy this lens, and that's what you need to get started. And it was really successful. I did a couple of portrait shoots. I really liked what I could do, and I wanted to get really into it. And then at some point, people started pay me money to do portrait photography for them, obviously trying to support my hobby.
Yeah.
But I thought, I could do this for a living, and so I decided to start roguemark. And then shortly after that, we ended up doing a short film, and that worked out really well. And so my decision then was to keep going with this and really get into production. That is, not just simple photography and videography, but very controlled shoots where you plan the outcome from the beginning and plan exactly how you're going to execute the shoot to get the outcome you want.
But how did you go from, I guess, the technology side of things, the programming side of things, to actual video production? Was it, did you want to be in the technology sector as a little kid? Was it just hey, my passion has changed over time, or was this something you had loved since being a little kid?
I would say photography and videography is something that I've enjoyed since I was a kid. I have done a few photography shoots and a few video shoots while I was younger. I once got, let's say, hired to film a wedding. And but this was when I was, I think, 13 or 14. I was very young at the time. But really, I think, for me, even programming was a very artistic endeavor. And I think a lot of people think of it as very logical and very restrictive, whereas I see it as more of a way to be expressive and just a set of tools that you have to create something that's whatever, well, and insert here whatever adjective you would like to, right? So for me, it was programs that were efficient, that were clean, that were easy to read by others, that I would contribute with, and then I think I applied a lot of that to film and to photography production. Sort of that analytical mindset that you have a set of tools that you can bring together to obtain a given result. So in a way, I would say that I am somewhere between the completely logical field, the science, where everything is very restrictive and very very clean cut, and the arts where it's a little more experimental, and you don't always know exactly what you're going to get. But when you bring the two together, I feel like I've had the chance to create some really, really unique things, and I have a really unique approach to it.
Gotcha. But how exactly did you go outside of your comfort zone? So, you're at a company, you had a decent paying job, you go in probably 8 to 5 like most of us, we work a little bit after hours. It pays the bills, we're all happy. What exactly made you want to quit and start something on your own? This is something that I think a lot of people deal with today. They have a passion, what starts out as a hobby, and they ask themselves as well, should this be a full-time job? Should this be something I actually pursue? And quit this 8 to 5, 6 to 9, 9 to 6 job that I go to?
I think for me, things happen in a way that essentially forced me in a position where I had to pick between the 9 to 5 and roguemark. And I was way too invested in roguemark as a passion, not to take the extra step to make it into a business. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so what do you say, though, to people who are like you, who are trying to figure out if, maybe they should quit their job? Do you think there's a magic formula out there that says, hey, you should pursue your passion and quit the 8 to 5 job, or, they should just continue maybe doing the mundane, the, go in, go out? Because I see tons of people who do this. They go to their job, they might have something that they do for fun on the side, but they're afraid to make that leap. Do you have any suggestions for those watching at home that are in that place?
I would say that as far as I'm concerned, it's terrifying to be on my own. So to anybody out there that's thinking about this, do not expect that things are going to be smooth. I mean, they might be, but I think the likelihood for that is fairly small. Expect that things will be rough. What you get is the ability to make decisions for yourself. And I made the choice that this is invaluable to me, that this is more valuable than the salary that I was getting paid at my day job. Whether this is right for anybody else, it's hard to say. I would say that I'm far happier now than I was having a 9 to 5 job. At the same time, I would say that I had to really push myself outside of the comfort zone, like you said, to get to the point where I realized that about myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah. You actually hit a point that I think a lot of small business owners, entrepreneurs who are getting off their feet actually realize. You use the word liberating to describe it, which, I've talked to you, I've talked to Melissa Bro, who may be on a future episode, a few other people here on the Triangle, and, they say, like, it's okay, it pays my bills, but it's just liberating, Yeah, I have to work from, early in the morning to late at night, but, being able to do this really on my own means a lot.
Right, yeah, and I was actually reading an article the other day talking about the fact that for millennials, being on their own is much more important than having a well-paying job at a reputable company. And I can absolutely understand that. I think it's important, or it was important for me, for my own development, in order to feel that I can pursue whatever I'm interested in, to have my own company and be my own boss.
Do you think that's just a cultural shift in today's society? You see so many small business owners, so many people around our age. Obviously, you hear about the Mark Zuckerbergs, the Toms at MySpace. But, even here in the Triangle, we have the American Underground, Raleigh HQ. What do you think really was the catalyst for a lot of this?
That's a really good question. I definitely think it was a cultural shift. I think it was a generational shift. And I think that the United States is at the forefront of this shift. Of course, there may be other places that are better examples for this, but by living here, I automatically have a cognitive bias towards it.
Well,
We essentially realized that each person has enough richness to populate an entire company, an entire brand. And we saw that in ourselves. So on one hand, it's very egocentric to say, I can build an entire company just around myself. On the other hand, it's the kind of egocentrism that artists or the entrepreneurs that you were mentioning earlier required to drive themselves far enough to do really great things. And so really, the difference between and this is the only difference between somebody who is on their own and somebody who chooses to have a more structured workday. The only difference is just having the insanity to do it.
sometimes I do agree with you. Insanity is the right word. So, saying that, actually, what characteristics do you think actually make a great entrepreneurial business person? Especially like in your space, you kind of gave up your job to pursue your passion. Do you think there are certain skills that set, I guess, those people apart?
I think there are a very large number of skills that an entrepreneur should have. I have only a small part of those skills, and I have to make them work for me the best that I can. I think that especially starting out, the leader of a company has to be in a position to wear all the different hats that he or she needs to in order to drive the company forward, whether that's business development, public relations, marketing, aside, of course, from the actual operations of the company and the main product that the company is selling.
Yeah.
And I haven't even touched on finances and the legal aspect yet.
That's all the fun stuff I'm sure you like dealing with.
Right, and see, for me, part of the issue was my business is something pretty artistic, and so it's not as easy to sell this as a product, because what I'm saying is, look, I know what I have to tell a client is essentially I know better than anybody else how to put your message forward. I'm commoditizing art. When you're paying me, you're getting you're basically getting the service that you would get from Mozart if you were living in his time. Because that's really what it is. I mean, we are selling creativity.
Definitely. And going back to what kind of skills and how you got into this. Obviously, we both talked about and agree that it's somewhat of a cultural shift going on right now. But seeing it, I guess, from someone who's literally came from Europe, is Europe going through the same thing right now? Do you think it's just an American way of thinking, or is it going around nationwide? Do you think it helps the fact that maybe you come from a different background?
Interestingly, it's possible. By virtue of having spent my early years in Europe, I probably have a mentality that's different from the majority of people that grew up in the United States. I think that's incidental, though. It may have helped the idea that I can go against the grain. At the same time, I think there are lots of people in the United States that decide that on their own without having any special or different background. And yes, I think that in Europe a similar thing is happening. However, the United States has the culture of individuality built into its very fabric. Right? I mean, it was founded on independence, and fostering the free will of each individual is really the cornerstone of American society. And I'm not saying that to sound like a cliche. I really believe that. I think that that's, for better or worse, definitely what a lot of the fantastic things that come out of the United States are built on.
That's interesting. That's something I had never thought about. The core values of this nation. They all, we were told to do one thing and we decided to do something else, and that's I think kind of what we're going through right now.
Well, that's true, but you have to realize in a lot of other countries around the world, in Romania too, it's actually really challenging to start out a business on your own, because there's a lot more bureaucracy and people are much more skeptical of you just going off on your own. So it's much more challenging to get the financial and the social support that someone that goes into business on their own gets over here.
The social support, that's actually something interesting. So you think maybe it has to do with the fact that we're open to new businesses, the social media we have going around, the freeness of the internet that we have today?
Yes, I think the internet and social media has brought about the realization that everybody on the planet is more or less the same. We're all people, right?
Yeah.
We all have the same needs, the same yearnings, and the same aspirations. We all want to accomplish ourselves professionally once, of course, we've met our basic needs. We all want to be free, and we want to express ourselves freely. I think the United States has a legal infrastructure and a constitution that really guarantees those rights. And if you go out on your own, people recognize that this is what you're chasing. And so there's a lot of infrastructure that's built around that. In Romania, people are a bit more guarded. And so if I was to say, I'm going to go be a photographer in Romania, I think that that proposition would be met with more skepticism, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, essentially your friends are telling you, watch out, don't jump into this head first, which is a very cautious piece of advice. At the same time, that's also something that, especially in the creative field, could be a bit stunting because you start to second guess yourself. You could end up with analysis paralysis, as they call it, right? And you start thinking, is this okay? Is it okay? Is it okay? Until you eventually talk yourself out of it. So as I was saying earlier, what happened for me is I didn't think about it very much. I just took a series of, or made a series of decisions that put me in a position where I had to choose what I'm going to do full time. And of course I was going to choose my baby, so that's how I ended up here.
That's actually interesting. The comparison, you said the culture in Romania. I guess we're more supportive here in the United States when it comes to startup endeavors, just as a society.
Well, yeah. Again, I think that the United States is built on a foundation of the individual as an independent entity, far more so than in Europe. This is not always a good thing. It's very easy to end up isolated, right? Because you're free to be whoever you want, on one hand. On the other hand, you're free to be whoever you want.
Yeah.
So whether that ends up being a good thing for your social health, let's say, is really a toss-up. However, it's very supportive of individual entrepreneurships, individual business endeavors, individual artistic endeavors, and so I think overall people find it easier to get started on their own over here.
I guess it would probably help you at least a little bit knowing your background as well. You moved from Romania to the United States, from Kentucky to North Carolina. I guess you already had a little bit of risk tolerance built in, that you weren't afraid to make moves, and that probably helped you as well, forming roguemark.
I've never thought of it that way, actually. I suppose that's true, yeah. There have been a lot of significant changes in my life, and so going through yet another one was not necessarily an outrageous proposal.
Yes, I think that's something, definitely the biggest thing, actually, as an entrepreneur, as somebody who's doing a creative endeavor, must learn how to do is, manage those risks. I think so many people, personally, that I talk to and see on a daily basis are like, oh, I have a cool idea, or I have something I want to say, but I'm afraid to take that risk. And obviously you've taken a few of them in your life, going from, Romania to the United States, from Kentucky to North Carolina, from switching jobs. I think personally that's probably the biggest skill set I would say as an entrepreneur is, going back to the skill set question, is that I think people need to be okay with taking risks. bad things will happen. I read a while ago, Donald Trump, one of the richest people in America, has been declared himself bankrupt like 6 times in his life. The guy's not afraid to take a shot.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. Yeah, I didn't know that about Donald Trump. But I think that it's very true that we have a lot of interesting stories about entrepreneurs, about Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs.
I was going to say, yeah, Jobs would even be the best one. Formed Apple, got kicked out of Apple, met a little company called Pixel, and then it's like, hey, yeah, I'm doing this Pixel thing, and Apple was like, that looks kind of cool. We kind of want you to come back.
Yeah, so anything can happen. This is true. I suppose the way that I am different is, while I'm very attracted to being on my own right now, I am also very attached to my brand.
Yeah.
So I'm making roguemark not with the interest of selling it off, which is a goal for a lot of entrepreneurs. And I think it's a remarkable goal. There's a point at which you say, okay, somebody else that's bigger could come over and take over what I do. It can do it with more tools and more staff. I think that what I do with roguemark would be difficult for anybody else to do. And in that way, roguemark is, in a sense, a DBA for me.
Okay. And now that we're talking about roguemark a little bit, one thing I did want to bring up is the We R Raleigh series that you started about a month ago, where you're taking some of these local entrepreneurs in the area. Your first video was Andy Little, and kind of telling their story. For those at home that aren't familiar with We R Raleigh, do you want to tell them a little bit about it?
Absolutely. We R Raleigh is a series of short-form documentaries that we have planned for a while. The goal for the entire series is to show a cross-section of the different institutions and businesses and establishments that exist here in Raleigh, and to highlight Raleigh as a lifestyle destination. As you said, Andy Little was our first episode, and we are planning to do other episodes with other enterprises or entities in the area. I'd like to hold off on mentioning what our plans are, but we really want to have as different as entities that are as different as possible for the future episodes. We want to do about 10 to 15, and each one of them is about 2 to 3 minutes long. We actually make a very strong point of creating short videos because we want people to have the time to really get into it and not sort of skip through the video just to see the pretty pictures.
God, sounds awesome. Well, I guess that's about it. We've been talking for about 15 to 20 minutes now. One thing I want to say is, again, guys, this is going to be the first episode of Live in the Triangle. It's going to be a Google Hangout series. Hopefully we'll have people like Alex once a week talking just about what's going on in their lives and how they became entrepreneurs. Alex, for those at home, where can we actually find you online?
Our website is www.roguemark.com. That's ROGUEMARK.com. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Well, you know the rest.
All the usual.
Right. Thank you for having me, Cole.
Oh, you're welcome. And is there any other upcoming projects in particular people can be on the lookout for?
So we are very excited to have done the photography for the new RTP website.
Okay.
And a project which has now been complete. Oh, well, it's, let's say, 99% completed. And I think that they're preparing to launch their new website sometime early September. So we're really looking forward to seeing our work up there.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Alex. Again, for those at home, this is Live in the Triangle. For feedback, you can always hit us up at cole@raleigh-triangle.com, or you can, send me a tweet on Twitter. I'm Cole_Watts. Thanks again, guys. Stay connected and stay awesome.
Thank you, Cole.